Young Pierre is brought back to his father's remote island in Spain after leaving a Catholic boarding school. But for unspecified reasons, he harbors intense resentment towards his father. Pierre worries that his mother may be making a serious error by staying with his father, which would only make the situation worse. His father tries to talk to him in the car on the way home, but Pierre brushes him off and says he has other things to do. When they get to the house, Pierre is still aloof and uninterested in spite of his father's pleading. Pierre is greeted warmly by the maid, Martha, and reluctantly agrees to accept her assistance with the bulky bags. Pierre, hoping for some peace and quiet, heads to the pool after learning from his father that his mother is upstairs. But to his surprise, his mother forces him into the water. In this strange place, Pierre finally starts to feel accepted as he resurfaces and is greeted with open arms by Helena. He learns over time that his mother and father are good people with flaws, just like him. Despite his difficulties, Pierre finds his place in the world and learns how to get around in his new surroundings. Helena tells Pierre she needs to go to the market during lunch, but she declines to take him along. She advises him to visit the beach or explore the city. Pierre decides to go on a tour of the desert, but as he observes other visitors having fun in the sand, he is left feeling empty. Pierre later finds his mother unconscious on the balcony when he gets home. He learns from his father that she passed out. Pierre, however, believes there might be more to the story. When Martha answers his questions about what transpired by saying that his father had spoken to Helena just before she passed out, Pierre becomes furious and storms inside that evening. When his father tries to speak with him, he unintentionally drops a glass, cutting them off. The next morning, Pierre discovers that his father has left for a business trip to France. He inquires after his father's whereabouts, and Helena replies that his mistress is in Nice. Pierre chooses to defend his mother and keep her secret safe despite his rage. Pierre gradually develops a fierce determination to learn the truth about his father's adultery and violent outbursts. Pierre spends some private time with a loved one. He has been walking the city, but he still finds it dull. He then runs into Helena and confronts her, asking her angrily why she stays in the city. Helena, however, is adamant that he simply hasn't found all of its incredible features. She does, however, offer to drive him to the water park and to dinner. However, Pierre is so eager that he inquires as to their plans for that day. Helena must regretfully decline. Later that evening, she makes a stunning return dressed in all black. At first, Pierre is irate, but the following day, Helena seduces him. The mother of Pierre breaks some heartbreaking news. After being involved in an accident, his father passed away. Even if he doesn't need to cry, she encourages him to experience some sadness. He tries to reassure her by saying that she is young and has time to make amends, but she rejects him and calls him an idiot. They visit a club where they see young men singing and getting naked. She explains to him that while they were in Istanbul, everything was enjoyable, but that life in Spain is dull now. She asks him to stop thinking of her in a certain way and shares secrets from her past, including the reasons she isn't always at home and the reason he was raised by his grandparents. When they get home, she talks to a doctor about Pierre's emotions, but she doesn't like the advice. One day before leaving, she hands him the key to his father's study and instructs him to take what he needs and throw the rest away. At a bar, Pierre discovered a collection of adult magazines and self-policed. When they meet Ree, they persuade Pierre to kiss and suck on her breast. Another night at the bar, Pierre and Ree have a kiss while the show is going on. Pierre searches for them but eventually passes out in the hallway. While longingly observing, Helena tells Ree to have sex with him when she sees him with Ree. She signs her son up for an orgy that morning with some of her friends. On the bed, they were all naked. Pierre goes back to the woman just before she awakens. While Nancy is reacting to his touch, they had an orgy where Hansi touched her. He sexually assaults her. In addition, Helena goes to touch Hansi that day as soon as she wakes up, thinking about what he has done. After reading a Bible verse and jogging outside in the rain, Pierre leaves the house. Helena claims that he is too young and has seen her true self as soon as he enters the room. She begs him to think of her in this way before revealing their incompatibility. He sets out for a deserted area after being devastated by her departure, where he wanders aimlessly and plays golf alone. He eventually returns to his empty home, where he spends his days by himself. He asks Hansi how she got inside his house after finding her swimming in his pool one day. She reveals that she let herself in and returned Helena's key, which surprises him. They become fast friends as they get to know one another. She brings some strange friends with her when she comes back the next time. When he approaches her to ask about her friends, he discovers that she only knows about one of them, Lulu. She reminds him that he suggested having more interesting group conversations. For the group, he makes coffee, but later he asks her to see him out following their post-coital conversation and meeting with Hansi. Hansi reveals that Lulu is her childhood friend and that she refers to Pierre as their slave when Pierre asks about Lulu. Helena continues to live with Ray in the meantime, but she can't help but miss Pierre. In a letter to his mother, Pierre once gushes about how Hansi's tardiness makes him feel more alive than any religious experience. His arrival coincides with the letters, and he reads it. She denies being upset about the letter when Pierre asks if she is, but she does question their relationship and wonders if he wants to leave her. Hansi tells the story of how she first met Pierre at the hotel after being forced by Pierre's mother to prepare prawns for a group of tourists. She also talks about how the leader of the tour group encouraged her to do whatever she pleased with her body, which made Pierre uncomfortable and forced him to interrupt. Pierre makes a promise that they won't do it again as they attempt to recreate the experience with coercive sex. Helena starts to miss Pierre in the meantime, but Ray tells her that he has forgotten about her and is lost in Nancy's care. She is devastated to discover Pierre and Hansi together when she gets home, and she is genuinely envious and longing for them. She inquires as to his desire to share her bed. She asks him to cut her abdomen, and he agrees to do it as she requests. They then go to the bedroom of the caller. She informs him that whatever they are doing is wrong and that stopping it is also wrong. She demands that he masturbate on her, at which point she slits her throat. Later, the police arrive to leave her remains. When Pierre visits the mortuary, he finds her corpse and masturbates next to it. When the attendant notices him, she drags him away against his will while he cries, "I don't want to pass away, Mom." He is taken away by the attendant. I hope you liked watching this video. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. I appreciate your attention.
Starts with a janitor cleaning the floors and is about to leave for the day. Suddenly, he hears a noise in the locker room and goes to check it out. He finds a girl sitting terrified on the floor and asks to help her, but then another girl comes in and tells him to run away. Later, we see Kyla taking pictures of everyone at the school for this year's school yearbook. She notices Chris, their new English teacher, and her attention draws to him. Trisha, a prominent girl at school, notices Chris and believes she can seduce him in 2 days. Everyone, especially the girls, is thrilled with their new English teacher. In their first class, Chris becomes every girl's new crush. Almost immediately after the class, Trisha doesn't waste any time and begins flirting with Chris. On the other hand, Kyla goes to her usual hangout place and sees Riley. There, she introduces herself to Riley. Riley shakes hands with Kyla, and then she reveals that Chris is her father. After becoming friends, Kyla asks Riley if she can come over to her house for a study session, seeing it as an opportunity to be close to Chris. After that, we see Kyla is getting interested in Chris and takes more pictures of him. She returns home and finds her mother getting ready to go on a date with a guy. She also notices that her mother has bought a new dress for the date. At night, Kyla dreams of Chris and pleasures herself. The next day, she goes to Riley's house. There, she doesn't waste any time and starts asking Riley questions about her father to answer her. Riley reveals that her mother was cheating on Chris, which resulted in a divorce, and they moved to a new place. Then Kyla also tells Riley about her father, who left her when she was just 6. In the meantime, when Riley goes to the bathroom, Kyla heads straight to Chris's room and imagines herself with him. The next day at school, Trisha is still trying to use her charm on Chris. She flirts with him, but Chris, being old-schooled, doesn't catch her hints. After the class, Trisha goes to Riley and befriends her. Kyla sees them together and feels jealous. She warns Riley that Trisha is dangerous and is obsessed with Chris. Kyla explains that Trisha has a history of messing around with teachers, as she had slept with a history teacher the previous year, which caused him to be substituted by another teacher for an entire year. Later that day, Kylie calls Riley and finds that Riley is turning 18 soon. As a result, Kyla suggests that she should host a birthday celebration at her house and Kyla will assist her in gathering as many visitors as possible. She then shifts the conversation to Chris and inquires about his dating history. She discovers Chris is dating someone who turns out to be none other than her own mother. She becomes envious of their flirting and sabotages their date. Chris is forced to spend the night with them because his clothes get filthy while having dinner. Kyla is unable to take her eyes off Chris, but she just can't watch her mother and Chris flirting and goes back to her room. She knows that her mother and Chris are going to make out to sabotage their moment. Kyla lies that someone was watching her change in her room and act scared. She wants to be with her mother and Chris so that they don't get late. There she learns from Chris that Riley is hanging out with Trisha despite her warning. The next morning, Chris offers to take Kyla to school as he is also going there. After picking up Riley while they wait for Riley to come, Kyla flirts with Chris and tells him that she is a grown-up now and can do anything in life she wants. During their conversation, Riley joins them and they leave for school. At school, Kyla confronts Riley about her going out with Trisha, despite her warning that Trisha is using her to get to her father. But Riley tells her that Trisha claims it wasn't her who had slept with their history teacher, but Kyla herself. Kyla denies the allegation and rudely behaves with Riley, forcing her to leave. Later, Kyla confronts Trisha and threatens her to stay away from Riley, but Trisha isn't bothered by her and refuses to back down. Also that night, Kyla takes pictures of herself in private poses. The next day, when Kyla opens her locker, she finds it filled with the pictures she took the night before. She goes straight to Chris, who assures her that he will find the person responsible for this. Riley sees them and leaves them alone. After that, Kyla and Riley make amends and apologize to each other. Kyla also reveals that it was her who slept with the history teacher, claiming that she was being manipulated. Now we see Kyla's mother is getting ready to meet Chris. Kyla examines Chris's phone when he's in the toilet and discovers private suggestive messages from Trisha. After reading the notes, Kyla's mother accuses Chris of using his students. Chris is then dumped by her mother, who asks him to go. Kyla, on the other hand, is relishing the situation because her mother is finally out of her way. She then heads over to Chris, who is sitting in his truck pondering what really happened. Kyla enters and begins to seduce Chris. She succeeds in seducing him and kisses him passionately. Chris cannot resist her anymore and give in. Kyla finally got what she wanted and she is very happy. It is then revealed that it was Kyla who sent those messages to Chris posing as Trisha. The next day at school, Chris is completely lost in class. Trisha is still trying to flirt with Chris, but Kyla interrupts her. In the meantime, the police arrive at the class and take Trisha away as they find the phone used to text Chris messages as well as the pictures of Kyla from the locker. Later that night, Kyla goes to the party and gives her some presents. She then heads straight to Chris's room and starts seducing him. Chris is still trying to resist Kyla's advances, but eventually gives in and they start making love. As they are about to hook up, Riley walks in and sees them together. She is disgusted by the scene and runs away. Chris tries to stop her, but it's too late and there is no going back. Chris decides to go after her, but is stopped by Kyla, who lies to him that Riley is addicted to alcohol. He ignores her and heads out to find Riley. The next morning, Riley tells Kyla's mother about everything that happened last night at school. Chris tries to make amends with Riley, but she isn't in the mood. After the class, Kyla's mother confronts Chris and slaps him. She takes Kyla away and leaves. Kyla tells her mother that she is of legal age and she can love anyone she wants and even claims that she and Chris are in love. Riley confronts Chris and wants to know why he did it. Chris apologizes to Riley for everything and tells her that he will not see Kyla anymore. Riley finally forgives him. The next day, Kyla calls Trisha and asks to meet her before school. When Trisha arrives, Kyla admits to framing her and starts hitting herself. She even breaks her fingers to frame Trisha. As Riley and Chris arrive, Kyla cries for help, claiming Trisha attacked her. After that, Trisha is arrested by the police and Kyla goes to the hospital. Riley and Chris go to the hospital, where Riley tells Kyla that her relationship with her father is over. Kyla appears to agree. She then asks Riley to take over her yearbook responsibilities for a basketball game that night since her hand is injured, to which Riley accepts. Kyla also asks Riley if she can talk to her father for the last time and say goodbye. After Riley leaves, Kyla tells Chris that with Trisha gone, they can finally be together, but Chris denies her, telling her their relationship is over and that she should leave him alone. Kyla is completely obsessed with Chris and wants to further grow her relationship with him. Kyla declares she will never leave him and reminds him he will have to see her every day in class. So Chris decides to quit his job to get away from her and leaves to gather his belongings from the classroom. Kyla takes a scalpel from the hospital and flees at the school. Kyla confronts Riley and tells her that only one of them can be in Chris's life and stabs Riley in the stomach. She then heads to Chris's class. She holds the scalpel to his throat, telling him they are meant to be together. After that, Kyla reveals that she was the one who manipulated her previous teacher, not the opposite. Riley is still alive and tries to get help. Chris manages to push Kyla off of him, but Kyla attacks Chris, who then hits his head on the table and gets unconscious. A janitor hears the commotion and stumbles upon Kyla, who pretends to be injured and asks him to get help. As the janitor runs to find help, Riley warns him to run, but Kyla catches him and kills him. As a result, the two get into a battle with Riley, eventually defeating Kyla. Riley and Kyla are both carried away in different ambulances by the police, but Riley gets shocked by the fact that Kyla is still alive. Months later, Chris and Riley have moved to a new place and Chris is ready to take up a new teaching job while Riley is excited about her first day of college. But as Riley is driving off to college, we see a hooded figure who we can assume to be Kyla emerge from hiding, meaning that she is still obsessively following Chris. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for watching more videos. See you.